Welcome to another episode of the SPX podcast, the Global Chessboard. Today, we'll delve into a complex and significant issue in global politics that often flies under the radar: the topic of Tibet and why China is so determined to hold onto this region. Now, most of us are aware that Tibet is a sensitive political issue, but let's break down why it holds such importance for China, both historically and strategically. First and foremost, Tibet is a region rich in resources. If we're talking about water, minerals, and even strategic positioning, Tibet offers China resources that are crucial for their development and power. However, there's a larger issue at play. Tibet lies at the crossroads of some major geopolitical dynamics, and it's the foundation of some of the most vital rivers in Asia. To understand why China values Tibet so highly, we need to look at its geographical significance. For centuries, Tibet has been at the heart of a crucial balance of power in the region. Its location makes it the source of some of the most important rivers that sustain hundreds of millions of people, particularly in countries like India, Nepal, and Southeast Asia. And that's one of the key reasons why China is so intent on controlling it. If Tibet were to break away, it could severely disrupt the flow of these rivers, and that's something China simply can't afford. Let's take a moment to look at the economic impact of Tibet's resources. The region's resources feed directly into China's massive manufacturing industry, agriculture, and energy production. Losing Tibet would mean a loss of access to these vital resources, and that would weaken China's economic power. In the world of global politics, resources are power, and China has no intention of letting go of Tibet. But it's not just about economic power. It's also about national security. Tibet is strategically located, sitting atop the Tibetan plateau. This provides China with both natural barriers and a unique vantage point for monitoring the region's political landscape. Tibet's geographical position offers China a military advantage that it wouldn't want to lose, especially considering the tensions it shares with neighboring countries. So, when we talk about why China is so determined to control Tibet, it's not just about history or culture, it's about the sheer strategic importance of the region. Tibet controls the headwaters of major rivers, including the Yellow River and the Yangtze, both of which have supported China for thousands of years. These rivers are vital for agriculture, industry, and domestic needs, and China simply cannot afford to lose control over them. Moving on, another reason China is focused on maintaining control over Tibet is its overwhelming geopolitical influence. The Tibetan Plateau is the source of 6 of Asia's most important rivers: the Yellow River, Yangtze, Indus, Ganges, Mekong, and Brahmaputra. These rivers are lifelines for hundreds of millions of people across Asia. And 2 of these, the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, are especially crucial for China's domestic needs. Imagine, for a moment, if Tibet were independent and had the power to control the flow of these rivers. If they decided to build dams or divert the water, that would spell disaster for China. Why? Because China is already doing something similar to its neighbors. Having control over these rivers is akin to possessing one of the most powerful geopolitical tools in the world. If China held all the power over these rivers, it could use them to assert dominance, or even threaten neighboring countries with disasters like floods or droughts. Let's zoom in on one river in particular, the Brahmaputra. It starts in Tibet, flowing through India and Bangladesh. This river is essential for both India and Bangladesh, but China is in control of its source. In fact, China has already built the Zhangmo hydroelectric plant, the largest hydropower project in Tibet, which started operations in 2011. This dam produces 2.5 billion kilowatts of electricity, enough to power a city of around 600,000 people. And here's the kicker: India is deeply concerned because China plans to build over 20 more dams along this river. Not only that, but China also has plans to divert the water flow from this river into dry areas within its own borders, effectively cutting off water supplies to India and Bangladesh. This control over the water sources means that China could benefit entirely, while its neighbors could be left high and dry. But the Brahmaputra is not the only river of concern. China also holds the reins over the Mekong River, which flows through Southeast Asia, providing water to countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. With control over the Tibetan Plateau and more than 87,000 dams, China essentially holds the power over the headwaters of 10 major rivers that serve over 2 billion people in Asia. The potential for influence here is immense. And it's not just about the water. China stands to gain massive benefits from the rivers in Tibet, from energy generation to water for irrigation, industry, and transportation. But there's a darker side to this control as well. China could potentially use these dams to create what is known as a water war. By controlling the water supply, they could cause devastating floods or droughts in neighboring countries, using the dams as a bargaining chip in geopolitical negotiations. The idea of using water as a weapon is not as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, in the past, India has suffered severe damage when Chinese dams suddenly released floodwaters, causing massive destruction. And it's not just floods. China's control over the flow of these rivers has been linked to droughts and water shortages in neighboring countries. The ability to control this vital resource gives China a powerful diplomatic and strategic advantage. From a political standpoint, China can use these rivers as leverage to apply pressure on countries like India and Bangladesh. They can create situations where these countries are left vulnerable to environmental disasters, or worse, be forced to comply with China's demands in exchange for access to water. The Tibetan Plateau is not just a piece of land, it's a strategic stronghold, with vast consequences for the future of Asia's economy, politics, and security. And this is why China will never let go of Tibet. Its control over the region and the rivers that flow from it means that China holds a unique position of power that other nations can only dream of. What do you think? Do you agree with China's stance on Tibet? Or do you think they should give it up? Let us know in the comments. And if this is your first time tuning in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode of SPX Podcast, The Global Chessboard. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you in the next one.